"They're moving in formation," Brooks muttered, his voice gravelly from years of command. "Controlled. Methodical. This isn't a scouting party." Standing beside him, Lieutenant Adrian Vega, a wiry young officer with an infectious energy, nodded grimly. "And the Zyrax aren't known for idle visits, Captain." Vega tapped the console, pulling up data on the Zyrax fleet. 47 warships, all heavily armed. Estimated arrival: 3 days. Brooks straightened, his gaze unwavering. 3 days to prepare for the galaxy's most notorious warriors. Hell of a way to start the week. The Zyrax were legends, whispered across colonies and among the crew in uneasy tones. An apex species, they prided themselves on conquest, testing potential rivals not for territory but to measure strength. Those who failed their tests were annihilated, a grim punctuation to their philosophy of survival of the fittest. "Lieutenant," Brooks barked, breaking the silence, "get me General Ben Abrahams on Earth. Priority Alpha 1. Vega saluted, his fingers dancing across the console. Within moments, the face of General Abrahams, a man whose presence demanded attention even over a transmission, filled the main screen. His square jaw and weathered features mirrored the weight of responsibility he carried as the head of Earth's military forces. "Captain Brooks," Abrahams began, his tone brusque, "I assume you're not calling to exchange pleasantries." Brooks gestured toward the display. "General, we've confirmed a Zyrax fleet en route. They'll reach Earth's orbit in 72 hours. Abrahams's expression hardened. "Have they sent any communication?" "No, sir. But their reputation speaks for itself. We need to assume this is a test of strength." "Understood," Abrahams replied, his voice like steel. "Earth has been preparing for this eventuality. We'll convene the Defense Council immediately. Stand by for further instructions." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the room in tense silence. Vega glanced at Brooks, his youthful optimism tempered by a flicker of doubt. "Do you think we can win, sir?" Brooks turned to his lieutenant, his gaze steady. "Vega, humanity has survived everything from plagues to world wars to interstellar famine. Winning isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the most determined." Before Vega could respond, an alarm blared through the ship. A crewman shouted from the communications station, "Incoming transmission, Captain." "It's from the Zyrax fleet." "On screen," Brooks ordered. The room fell silent as the visage of Zarkor, the supreme commander of the Zyrax, filled the display. His towering frame and crimson scales glistened under the harsh light of his ship. Eyes like molten gold scanned the humans with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "I am Vanzer, the Zyrax Dominion," he announced, his voice resonating like a thunderclap. "Humans, we have observed your expansion into the stars. You are unproven, unworthy of your place among the strong." Brooks stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "This is Captain James Brooks of the United Human Systems." "State your purpose, Commander." Vanzer bared his fangs in what might have been a smile. "We seek to test your strength, your will to survive. We offer a challenge. Demonstrate your worth, or be erased from existence." Brooks held his ground, his tone unyielding. "And what does this test entail?" Vanzer's eyes narrowed. "Battle. On terms we will dictate. Refuse, and your extinction will be swift." Before Brooks could reply, the transmission cut out, leaving the crew staring at the blank screen. Vega exhaled sharply. "That's direct." Brooks turned to the crew, his voice commanding. "Prepare for full combat readiness. Vega, contact General Abrahams and relay everything we've learned. If they want a test, we'll damn well give them one." Hours later, aboard Earth's Central Defense Headquarters, the Emergency Defense Council convened. General Abrahams stood at the head of the table, his presence dominating the room of military officials and strategists. "Ladies and gentlemen," Abrahams began, addressing the tense assembly, "the Zyrax have issued their challenge. We need options." A murmur spread through the room, punctuated by grim expressions. One of the advisors spoke up. We can't match their technology or numbers in a direct confrontation. Humanity's survival has always depended on our ability to outthink and outmaneuver stronger opponents. Abrahams nodded. Agreed. If brute force isn't our answer, we must use our history as our weapon. Confused glances passed around the table. Vega, who had accompanied Brooks to the meeting, stepped forward. General, I've studied the Zyrax extensively. Their culture is built on respect for strength, both physical and strategic. If we can show them what humanity has endured and overcome, it might force them to reconsider their view of us. Abrahams's eyes narrowed. You're suggesting a demonstration, not of our present capabilities, but of our past? Yes, sir, Vega said firmly. If they see the ingenuity, resilience, and determination that define us, they might understand that strength isn't just about weapons or numbers. It's about spirit. Abrahams considered this for a moment before turning to Brooks. Captain, do you think this will work? Brooks's gaze was resolute. If there's one thing history has taught us, General, it's that underestimating humanity is a mistake. Abrahams nodded sharply. Then let's give them a history lesson they'll never forget. As the meeting adjourned, Brooks and Vega returned to the Endurance, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on their shoulders. The captain stood at the viewport, gazing at the distant stars. Think they'll listen? Vega asked, joining him. Brooks's lips curled into a faint, wry smile. They'll listen, and when they do, they'll realize they've picked a fight with the wrong species. The stars outside shimmered as the Endurance began its preparations. In 3 days, humanity's survival would rest not on its technology, but on the lessons written in its blood-stained history. The vast hall aboard the Zyrax flagship was an intimidating blend of alien elegance and stark functionality. Its walls pulsed with faint light, as though the ship itself was alive, observing the humans who now stood within its heart. Captain James Brooks and Lieutenant Adrian Vega faced the towering figure of Vanzer, Supreme Commander of the Zyrax Dominion. Flanked by a dozen armed warriors, Vanzer's golden eyes glimmered with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. You requested an audience, Vanzer growled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. Speak, humans, and prove you are not the fragile creatures we believe you to be. General Ben Abraham stepped forward, his imposing presence undiminished by the alien grandeur. His words were measured, each one laced with steel. Supreme Commander Vanzer, you came to test humanity's strength, yet strength takes many forms. Allow us to show you what defines us, what has shaped our resolve across the ages. Then you may decide if we are worthy of your respect. Vanzer tilted his head, the motion unervingly reptilian. Do not mistake this for leniency. Your history will only delay the inevitable if it fails to impress. With a wave of Vanzer's clawed hand, the room dimmed, and a holographic projection flared to life. Images of Earth rotated in midair, its continents bathed in the golden glow of the sun. Vega stepped forward, activating the interface embedded in his gauntlet. Supreme Commander, this is where our story begins, Vega said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Earth our cradle and the proving ground of our species. For millennia, we have fought not only to survive but to thrive. The projection shifted, zooming into the ancient world. Scenes of warriors clashing with swords and shields materialized, their battle cries echoing faintly in the chamber. Let me tell you about Thermopylae, Vega began. 2,500 years ago, 300 warriors of Sparta stood against an army of tens of thousands. They fought not for conquest, but to protect their homeland, knowing they would die. Yet their sacrifice bought their allies the time to rally, and their story inspired generations. The image showed Spartans in crimson cloaks, locked in brutal combat against a tidal wave of enemies. The Zyrax warriors exchanged glances, intrigued by the stark contrast between the humans' primitive tools and their indomitable spirit. They chose death over submission, Vega continued, because for us, strength isn't just in numbers. It's in the will to stand against impossible odds. Vanzer's eyes narrowed, his tone skeptical. Courage is admirable, but courage alone does not win wars. Abrahams interjected, his voice sharp. True, but history proves we are more than just brave. Watch. The projection shifted again, now showing Hannibal's army crossing the snow-capped Alps. War elephants trudged through blizzards, their riders steering them toward the Roman heartland. Hannibal Barca, Vega said, a brilliant tactician who defied the mighty Roman Republic. When the mountains seemed impassable, he found a way. He defeated armies larger and better equipped because he understood that strategy could overcome strength. Vanzer watched intently, his warriors murmuring amongst themselves. The Supreme Commander silenced them with a glance. The projection jumped forward in time. Now it displayed knights in gleaming armor, clashing in chaotic melees. Castles burned as siege engines hurled flaming projectiles. This was the age of chivalry, Vega explained, a time of feudal lords and unending conflict. But even amidst the bloodshed, we adapted. The English longbow, for instance, changed the nature of war, allowing common soldiers to bring down heavily armored knights. This was the birth of innovation on the battlefield. The Zyrax warriors studied the images carefully. One stepped forward, addressing Vanzer in their guttural tongue. The Supreme Commander nodded, his gaze returning to the humans. You adapt because you must, not because you are strong. Abraham's lips curled into a faint smile. Strength born of necessity is the truest kind, Commander. And we've had no shortage of necessity. The holograms shifted once more. Cannon fire shattered the night sky as soldiers fought in orderly lines across smoke-filled fields. Napoleon Bonaparte stood atop a hill, his hand thrust into his coat as he surveyed his troops. This is the age of empires, Vega said. Here, humanity learned to think bigger. We built massive armies, devised complex strategies, and waged wars that spanned continents. Vanzer gestured to the projection, his tone tinged with skepticism. Yet you waste your strength fighting among yourselves. How does this prove your worth? Because war taught U.S. resilience, Brooks interjected, his voice calm but firm. Every conflict, no matter how devastating, forced us to grow stronger. We learned, adapted, and rebuilt. That's why we're here today. The holograms shifted again, this time slowing as they depicted scenes of unparalleled destruction. Trenches carved into the earth, soldiers enduring gas attacks, and skies darkened by dogfights. The Great War unfolded before the Zyrax, its brutality palpable even in silence. World War I, Vega said somberly. The war to end all wars, or so we thought. Millions died, yet humanity endured. The projection transitioned to World War II. A mushroom cloud rose ominously over a scorched horizon, the silent testament to humanity's capacity for devastation. Vanzer's golden eyes narrowed as he studied the image, his tail flicking in agitation. This is what we learned, Abraham said, his tone heavy. War is not just a test of strength. It is a test of survival, of who we are when pushed to the brink. And no matter the odds, humanity has always found a way to survive. Vanzer turned to face the humans, his expression unreadable. You destroy as much as you create. Your species fascinates me. But fascination is not respect. Abraham stepped closer, his voice unwavering. Then let us finish. You've seen only the foundation of what we are. Let us show you what humanity became when tested by fire. Vanzer hesitated, then nodded slowly. Continue. But know this. I have seen many species claim resilience. Few live to prove it. Brooks's eyes met Abrahams's, a flicker of determination passing between them. The history lesson was far from over, and humanity's survival depended on making its case. The holographic display flickered, transitioning from the devastation of ancient wars to the smoke-filled skies of industrial battlefields. The Zyrax warriors, still and silent, watched as humanity's history unfolded before them. Their sharp eyes gleamed with a mixture of intrigue and skepticism. But Vanzer remained impassive, his towering frame motionless. General Ben Abrahams's deep voice cut through the hum of the display. What you're about to see is the era where humanity's conflicts evolved, where war became not just a test of strength but a crucible of innovation. The projection began with scenes of steam-powered machines and sprawling factories, churning out endless supplies of weapons and ammunition. Industrial warfare, Lieutenant Vega explained, his voice steady but laced with intensity. In the 19th century, humanity entered an age where wars were fought not only with soldiers, but with entire nations mobilized to support them. It was here that we learned war could reshape civilizations. The hologram shifted to a battlefield from World War I. Trenches snaked through the earth like scars, soldiers huddling in the mud as artillery shells rained down around them. Barbed wire stretched across no man's land, a grim barrier between opposing forces. This was the Great War, Vega continued. For 4 years, millions fought and died in conditions that would break most species. We endured chemical weapons, machine guns, and tanks. Every death taught us something new. Every setback forced us to adapt. A Zyrax warrior stepped forward, his scales shimmering under the projection's light. Your resilience is noted, but I see no honor in such senseless slaughter. Where is the strength in that? Abraham's gaze locked onto the alien. Strength isn't always honorable. Sometimes it's about survival, about enduring long enough to learn how to win. The image transitioned again, this time to the global conflict of World War II. Massive fleets clashed across oceans. Cities burned under relentless bombing raids, and soldiers stormed beaches under withering fire. World War II, Vega narrated, his tone somber. The deadliest conflict in our history. Entire nations united against tyranny, mobilizing every resource at their disposal. And when victory demanded innovation, we delivered. The projection zoomed in on the Enola Gay, the B-29 bomber that delivered the atomic bomb to Japan. As the mushroom cloud rose in eerie silence, even Vanzer's golden eyes flickered with unease. This, Vega said, gesturing to the image, is the power humanity unlocked, the destructive force of the atom, capable of wiping out entire cities in seconds. It ended the war but came at a price, one that forever changed how we saw ourselves. Vanzer spoke, his voice low and deliberate. You unleashed devastation upon your own kind. Why? What purpose did it serve? Abraham stepped forward, his expression grim. The purpose was to end a war that had already claimed tens of millions of lives. But it taught us a lesson. Unchecked power comes with consequences. That knowledge tempered us and shaped how we wield strength. The projection shifted to the Cold War era. The image of a divided Berlin appeared, flanked by the infamous wall. Soldiers patrolled its borders, while nuclear missiles stood poised, ready to destroy the world. This was the Cold War, Vega said, a time when the world stood on the brink of annihilation. For decades, two superpowers engaged in a silent battle, not with guns but with ideas, espionage, and technology. Scenes of spies exchanging briefcases, satellites orbiting Earth, and scientists racing to unlock the secrets of the universe played out on the screen. The space race, the arms race, proxy wars. Every move was a test of patience, strategy, and ingenuity. We learned that strength isn't just about who strikes first, but who can outlast and outthink their opponent. The hologram transitioned to modern warfare. Drones hovered silently over desolate landscapes, delivering precision strikes. Cyber warriors typed furiously at keyboards, disabling enemy infrastructure without a single shot fired. This is the face of war today, Vega continued. Battles are fought on physical, digital, and psychological fronts. We no longer need millions of soldiers or vast armies to win. A handful of minds and machines can turn the tide. One of the Zyrax warriors growled. Where is the honor in such battles? Where is the test of strength? Brooks, who had remained silent, finally spoke. His voice was calm but carried a sharp edge. Strength isn't static. It evolves. Honor in battle is a luxury for those who don't face extinction. For us, war has always been about survival, about ensuring there's a tomorrow. The display paused. the light dimming slightly as Vanzer stepped forward. His movements were slow and deliberate, his gaze fixed on Abraham's. "Your history is complex," Vanzer admitted. "You adapt, innovate, and endure, yet your species seems defined by destruction. How can a race that thrives on conflict hope to claim a place among the strong?" Abrahams met the Supreme Commander's gaze, his voice unwavering. "Because we are more than the wars we fight. Every conflict has taught us not only how to destroy, but how to rebuild, how to find unity in the face of chaos. That is our greatest strength." The hologram shifted to images of peace. Humans shaking hands across cultures, rebuilding cities, and venturing into space. It ended with a view of Earth from orbit, its blue surface glowing against the darkness of space. "This," Vega said, "is what we fight for, not conquest but survival, not domination but progress. Our history is scarred by war, but those scars remind us of what we stand to lose." Vanzer studied the projection in silence, his expression inscrutable. For the first time, he seemed to consider the humans not as adversaries, but as something more. "Your words carry weight," Vanzer said finally, "and your history speaks of a will I have not seen in other species. Yet words and memories are not enough. I will need more to judge your worth." Abrahams nodded, his expression resolute. "You'll get more, Supreme Commander. We're just getting started." The chamber's dim glow reflected the heavy silence that followed the history lesson. Vanzer's golden eyes fixed on the humans, unblinking and unreadable. His warriors, normally restless, stood still, their earlier skepticism tempered by a growing curiosity. Yet the Supreme Commander's voice, when it came, carried a note of challenge. "You've shown us destruction and resilience, humanity's ability to survive against itself and its enemies. But survival alone does not make you worthy. You claim to wield ultimate strength. Prove it." Captain Brooks stepped forward, his rugged face cast in the shifting light of the holograms. "Supreme Commander, you've seen our wars, our innovations, and our resilience. But there's something more fundamental, something that defines our strength even in the darkest of times." Abrahams nodded at Vega, who tapped his wrist console. The hologram flickered, replacing the scenes of war with images of people. Medics rushing into bombed-out buildings, hands pulling strangers from rubble, soldiers shielding children with their own bodies. "This," Brooks said, gesturing to the images, "is our greatest strength. The ability to rise above conflict, to find hope when all seems lost, to unite when survival demands it. We call it humanity." The projection zoomed into a scene from the Battle of Stalingrad, where civilians and soldiers alike fought to hold their city. Starved and battered, they refused to surrender, driven by a shared determination to protect their home. "This is what the Zyrax need to understand," Vega said, his voice steady but passionate. "Strength isn't just about weapons or strategies. It's about the spirit to endure and the capacity to care for one another, even in the face of annihilation." Vanzer's tail flicked, his claws tapping against the metallic floor. "Empathy is a weakness," he said, his tone sharp. "In war, it clouds judgment and exposes vulnerabilities." Abrahams's expression hardened. "Only if you don't understand it. Empathy unites us. It's what allows a species to endure the impossible, not as individuals, but as a collective. That's why we're still here, standing before you." The hologram shifted again, this time to the Apollo 11 mission. The camera panned to Neil Armstrong stepping onto the lunar surface, his iconic words echoing in the silence of the chamber. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Brooks's voice carried a note of pride. "This wasn't a battle, but it was a test. We turned our ingenuity and courage to explore the unknown, not for conquest but for discovery. Our strength isn't just in fighting wars. It's in creating a future worth fighting for." Vanzer leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the humans. "You speak of unity, of progress, yet your history is stained with conflict. How can a species born of chaos claim to rise above it?" Abraham stepped closer, his steel-gray eyes locking onto Vanzer's molten gold. Because chaos is where strength is forged. Every war, every hardship has taught us what it means to endure. We're not perfect. We never claim to be. But our ability to learn, to adapt, and to strive for something better is what makes us strong. The hologram displayed a montage of moments from Earth's history. The Berlin Wall falling, nations rebuilding after war, humanitarian aid reaching disaster zones, and astronauts working together on the International Space Station. Brooks pointed to the images. We've fought among ourselves, yes, but we've also learned to heal, to come together for a common purpose. That's what makes humanity unique. We're always reaching for something greater, even when the odds are against us. Vanzer stood, his towering form imposing even in silence. The Zyrax warriors around him shifted uneasily, their earlier confidence replaced with something more subdued. The Supreme Commander's voice, when it came, was quieter but no less commanding. You claim strength and unity, yet unity is fragile. Prove to me it can endure. Prove to me that it is not a fleeting ideal. Abraham's jaw tightened, but Brooks placed a hand on his shoulder. The captain stepped forward, his gaze unflinching. We can prove it, Vanzer. Not just through words or history, but through action. If the Zyrax want a challenge, then let us face it together. A test of will, of ingenuity, and of spirit. Not as enemies, but as equals. Vanzer's eyes narrowed. You propose cooperation? Yes, Brooks replied, his voice firm. If you truly wish to measure humanity's worth, fight alongside us. See firsthand what we're capable of when our survival is on the line. That is the ultimate test, not of our weapons, but of our spirit. The chamber fell into a heavy silence, the weight of Brooks's words hanging in the air. The Zyrax warriors exchanged uncertain glances, but Vanzer remained motionless, his mind clearly turning over the proposal. Finally, he spoke. Very well, Captain Brooks. If your species wishes to be judged by more than its history, we will test you in the crucible of battle. But know this. Failure will mean the extinction of your kind. Brooks's expression didn't waver. Then let the test begin. Humanity doesn't fear the impossible. We rise to meet it. Vanzer let out a low growl, one that might have been approval. Prepare yourselves, humans. The Zyrax will not hold back. As the humans turned to leave, the hologram fading behind them, Abrahams glanced at Brooks. Do you think we've done enough to convince them? Brooks's lips curled into a faint smile. They wanted strength. They're about to see what that really means. The doors to the chamber slid shut behind them, sealing the humans and Zyrax into an alliance born of necessity. The true test of humanity's ultimate strength was just beginning.